Well, it's Valentine's Day, and that seems like a good time for our monthly visit to our favorite website, Everyday Feminism. Everyday Feminism is a place where straight men can go to experience the true joy of feminism, which is making fun of feminism. It's also a place where women can go if they're unhappy, angry, confused, and perpetually dissatisfied, and they want to be with other women like themselves. Today on Everyday Feminism, we find a post entitled 9 Fantastic Ways to Be a Practicing Feminist with Your Partner. And you know just how fantastic it's going to be because it's illustrated with a picture of a happy gay Eurasian man washing dishes. I'm not sure what that's about, but I know if a happy gay Eurasian man would come over to my house and wash dishes, that would be fantastic. And when he's done, maybe he could take out the trash. The post is written by Tori Truscheid. No, really, that's her name, I swear. And Tori Truscheid explains that she's a lesbian who enjoys dating masculine women. So she knows a lot about being with men because her friends tell her about it, and it sounds very difficult. I'm not making any of this up. So Tori Truscheid asks, what does feminism look like in a relationship with a man? Which, of course, is a difficult question to answer, since it would involve finding a man who is in a relationship with a feminist and is able to stop sobbing long enough to explain what it's like. But as a lesbian who dates masculine women, Tori Truscheid offers the following 9 guidelines to straight men for how to be in a relationship with a feminist. Number 1, continually ask for consent. Tori Truscheid writes, and this is a direct quote, so help me, I've lived in a tragic bind for the last decade, which is that I'm a lesbian who loves breasts, but I'm attracted to masculine women who don't enjoy their breasts being touched. Unquote. So if you're a man in that situation, make sure to continually ask for consent before sneaking out the back door and never going home again. Number 2, actually listen. Actually, I don't know what the section said because I wasn't paying attention. Number 3, respect your partner's autonomy over their body. Happily, if your partner can be described by the possessive adjective their, it's possible she has more than one body, and you can respect her autonomy over one of them while going to town with the others until the first one is ready to go. Number 4, split housework, but in a way that works for everyone. This sentence has no rational meaning. Well, there are 5 more fantastic ways to be a feminist with your partner in the article 9 Fantastic Ways to be a Feminist with Your Partner. But if you followed the fantastic advice in the article so far, you probably no longer have a partner and are now miserable, lonely, bitter, and angry. So you've come to the right website. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky. Life is tickety-boo. Birds are singing, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
I think we should just end the show. I don't think I can dominate that. All right. Well, if you're sitting at home and you're looking at your life and it's miserable and everything is broken and you've made all these mistakes, don't worry. Tomorrow is the mailbag. You can write in your questions about anything you want, and we will answer them, and the answers are guaranteed to change your life occasionally for the better. But you have to subscribe to thedailywire.com, subscribe, and then you can ask your questions. Then your life will be incredible. I mean, you will just say, oh, my goodness, I'm so glad. Those $8, what were they worth to me in my misery when I can ask these questions? All right, so the left got itself a scalp, and they are happy. Michael Flynn, the National Security Advisor, resigned. He had, what had he done? It's a kind of good question. What had he done? He had talked to the Russians before he took office, to the Russian ambassador before he took office. He had talked about the sanctions that Obama had put on the Russians for theoretically tampering with the election. who cares that he did this? But he did. But then he lied to officials about it, Mike Pence included, and Pence went on TV and defended him and then felt kind of wrong-footed, and now it came to light. It was all of this was leaked to the press. So the story that the press is telling now is that the White House is in complete chaos, right? This is complete chaos, and everything is just falling apart. And this president will never accomplish anything, just like he never won the nomination, and he would never win the presidency. So now he's never going to be able to accomplish anything. Here's the Washington Post: upheaval is now standard operating procedure in the White House. Once dismissed as growing pains 3 weeks ago, once dismissed as growing pains, the chaos that was one of Donald Trump's trademarks in business and campaigning now threatens to plague his presidency, according to interviews with a dozen White House officials and other Republicans. Just to compare, just for fun, to compare the way they treated Obama when he couldn't get anything done. He first got into the White House, right? Here's Terry Moran from ABC News interviewing Obama. Listen to the difference in tone.
Mr. President, you got no honeymoon. Not a single Republican vote in the House on your first major piece of legislation.
Well, I'm getting a big honeymoon from the American people.
But what happened? Coming into the presidency, maybe you were too nice. If I'm a Republican senator or a Republican congressman, I might think you're a very nice guy, but maybe I don't have enough reason to fear you.
I'm waiting for this interview with the Donald. President the Donald, you're just too nice. Why didn't you get a honeymoon? Oh, yeah, because we're attacking you every day. Now, remember, so the press is happy. They feel like that. Here's a New York Times reporter yesterday.
You know what? I'm feeling pretty good about myself right now. I'm feeling like a real man with real cojones.
Okay, maybe that wasn't really a New York Times reporter, but maybe it was. For all I know, it could well have been. All right, so, they did give the impression of chaos. Kellyanne Conway went out and said that Flynn had the complete confidence of the president. And then within 45 minutes, Sean Spicer was saying not so much. And within another hour, Flynn was gone. So Matt Lauer has Kellyanne, and he's taken her to pieces. Here's the first cut.
Yesterday afternoon on MSNBC, you said that Michael Flynn enjoyed the full confidence of the president. Sean Spicer later said the president was evaluating the situation, and then Michael Flynn resigns overnight. Were you out of the loop on this?
No, not at all. Both were true. The president is very loyal. He's a very loyal person, and by night's end, Mike it was best to resign. He knew he'd become a lightning rod, and he made that decision.
So had he not resigned, the president would continue with him as national security advisor, even though he misled the vice president and the administration about the contents of that call?
That fact is what became unsustainable, actually. I think misleading the vice president really was the key here. And I spoke with the president this morning. He asked me to speak on his behalf and to reiterate that Mike Flynn had resigned. He decided that the situation had become unsustainable for him.
So this happens every time somebody gets the can, basically, in politics. Every time somebody comes out beforehand and says, the president has 100%, confidence in this man, and then the trapdoor opens underneath him and he's gone, So the big question, the question that the press is asking is, why did this take so long? If the FBI and the intelligence community had warned, the Justice Department had warned the president that he might be blackmailed because he had said things to the Russians and then had not been honest about what he said, although that seems really, really far out there that would get him blackmailed. But okay, if he knew about it, why didn't he fire him? So here's the exchange where Matt Lauer tries to say that this proves that he was acting for Trump. He was contacting the Russians for Trump, and it was all, basically the administration. I mean, what this is about, let's remember, these sanctions that Obama lowered on them were a political move in the first place. They were just to delegitimize the presidency by saying that the Russians had somehow skewed the election, which we now know is untrue. We now know that people did not vote according to things that the Russians did. That really didn't happen. So this whole thing with the sanctions was a political setup to begin with. So it's not like a real thing, so he's talking about it. So what the big conspiracy would be, I don't know, but Matt Lauer feels that he's on the trail of something. Here it is.
You're starting to make me think that perhaps General Kelly was not freelancing during that call when he talked about or hinted, General Flynn, that he wasn't freelancing during that call, that in fact he may have been making that call on behalf of the administration or the incoming administration. Would that be accurate?
No, it would be a mistake to conclude that. Remember, in the end, it was misleading the vice president that made the situation unsustainable.
Which the White House knew about last month. And yet yesterday you went on the air and said that General Flynn had the complete and full confidence of the president.
And General Flynn decided that he should resign last night, and the president accepted that resignation. The president is very loyal, and he's been carrying forward with his entire team very effectively, frankly. And at this stage, he accepted the resignation, and he's moving on.
Well, you know, one of the things is, I mean, I don't know what the sequence of events was. No one else does either, except for Trump and maybe the few people who were around him. So one of the things I've noticed about commentary is people speculate, and then the speculation becomes the fact, and people just act as if they're crazy speculations or what actually happened. I mean, I can imagine Trump is a loyal guy. He does stick with people right down to the end. I can imagine Trump trying to stick with this guy, becoming impossible for Pence to work with him. I think that Trump has a lot of investment in Pence, because I think that he knows that Pence is his connection to Congress. He knows he's not going to get anything. He doesn't know how to deal with, the Senate and the House, and he knows he's not going to get anything done. He knows that Pence gives him respect he wouldn't otherwise have. And there was a lot of noise about the kind of hires that Flynn was making. So maybe Flynn wasn't doing that good a job, and he just eventually said, this has got to happen. I don't know. I do not know what happened. But here's the thing. There's all this talk about the Logan Act. And this is trash, okay? Because the Logan Act essentially says that private citizens are not allowed to negotiate with countries that we're at odds with, basically. And no one's ever been, one person was once indicted on it. No one's ever been prosecuted on it, ever. No one's ever been prosecuted on it. And if they were, it would be tossed out on First Amendment grounds. I mean, you can talk to anybody you want, and what difference does it make? If I go talk to the Russian ambassador, that's not going to do anything to the country. I mean, it's a ridiculous thing. There's no reason why an incoming administration shouldn't be talking to him. It's absurd. I mean, this part of it is absurd, that he violated some kind of criminality, but that is part of what the left is selling. The best one, this was just before the resignation, was our old friend Keith Olbermann, which I have to play because it's just too hilarious, where he now believes the entire government. I love this guy. He's like the clown, the jester of the court of Donald Trump. It's like Donald Trump, and then the guy comes out with the little bells on his hat and all this stuff. Keith Olbermann believes now the entire country has been taken over by the Russians.
I call for the immediate indictment of Michael Thomas Flynn on charges of and his immediate arrest on suspicion of violations of the Logan Act. I call for his immediate suspension, resignation, or dismissal as the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States of America. I call for the immediate investigation of whether his relationship with the Russian government is limited to activities covered by the Logan Act, or if he is acting as an agent of the Russian government, or as in the past, acting as a paid employee of companies affiliated with the Russian government. I call for Senators Graham and McCain and any remaining patriotic Americans on the Republican senatorial roster, if any there yet be, to fulfill their promise of weeks ago to immediately conduct a full, open, and limitless investigation into Russian hacking during the election, into Russian coordination with the Republican presidential campaign during the election, and into the contact between the Russians and the transition team between the time of the election and the time of the inauguration.
The Russians have captured the airport. Yeah. Listen, you guys, we've just got to get organized. For God's sake, we've got to get organized. Just don't panic.
Keith Olbermann starring in The Russians Are Coming. The Russians are coming. So the government is taken over by the Russians. We violated the Logan Act, something terrible. The White House is in chaos. Listen, Trump has a chaotic style. The Wall Street Journal wrote a piece today kind of describing what happens is that he likes there to be, anytime there's a president, his inner circle divides into power centers. Okay, that just happens with any group. It's going to happen with any group. And usually the chief of staff, in this case, Reince Priebus, kind of guides everybody in. You can go in now and you can go in then, kind of puts people together so it all makes sense. And that doesn't seem to be happening yet after 3 weeks with this guy who was never a politician before. The Wall Street Journal writes Vice President Mike Pence ran the transition and has a say in personnel, among other things. Strategist Stephen Bannon and his policy mate Stephen Miller share Mr. Trump's fondness for shocking the Beltway bourgeoisie and wrote the botched executive order on immigration. Son-in-law Jared Kushner appears to play on any issue he wants. Kellyanne Conway is a presidential favorite who takes the media spears on the cable shows. Gary Cohn runs the National Economic Council and is already muscling out competing voices on taxes and finance and block supply-siders Steve Moore and Larry Kudlow from senior White House jobs. Then there's Reince Priebus, the nominal chief of staff who was supposed to impose order on the joint but hasn't been given the power to do so. And now they're starting to blame him. You're starting to hear all this stuff about Reince Priebus, and maybe we're going to get rid of Reince Priebus and all this stuff. So there's a little bit of disorder at the White House. And, that is part of the Trump style. Part of the Trump style is like this kind of creative destruction. Whether this is going to be a huge problem or not is absolutely beyond our ken. It's impossible to know. All we do know is that all the same people who are telling us that Trump can't succeed and that Trump can't do anything were the same people telling us he couldn't get elected, same people telling us he couldn't get nominated. So there's much to say. I have something really important to say about this, but unfortunately I got to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube, so you got to come over to thedailywire.com and hear the rest. You can watch if you subscribe, and if you subscribe, you can be in the mailbag tomorrow. All your problems solved.